Welcome to the My House Podcast, a show about the past, present, and future goings-on at the My House Youth Drop-In Center in Wasilla, Alaska, with your host, Michelle Overstreet.
Hi, welcome to episode 27 of the My House Podcast. I'm your host, Michelle Overstreet, and today I'm joined by Philip Licht from Set Free Alaska.
Hello.
Hi, thank you for being with us. Before we get into our discussion, Philip, we're going to cut to Isaac really quick for a housekeeping update. Isaac, do you have anything for us?
Sure, there's a couple other podcasts that are coming out, as always. Diagnonsense, we have our one-year extravaganza that will be out next week on Wednesday.
I'm not sure you guys need an extravaganza. It's pretty extravagant every day.
Yes, we do. My voice will be out this Friday, part two of this two-part series that we're doing with a former client. Really, really powerful stuff. Especially if you listen to part one, go listen to part two. And if you haven't listened to part one, go listen to that now, right after this, and then go listen to part two, which will be dropping Friday after this releases. Redemption's all wrapped up for season 2, so that'll be back on hiatus for another couple months. And as far as events going on here at the building, Thursday, March 23rd, and that's important because that date got changed from Friday to Thursday.
That's correct.
We have the Community Advisory Board meeting here in the cafe. The meeting starts at 10. Breakfast is kind of like 9:30-ish if you want to show up a little bit early. And if you're interested in being a part of that, you need to call the office, 907-373-4357, 373-HELP, and see about scheduling a invite to that Community Advisory Board meeting. And we'll be discussing the new building updates and some of the program updates. So tons of good stuff there. And there'll be breakfast, and you can eat out of the cafe. I mean, that's always a plus too, right?
That's food. Yeah. Food speaks. Very good. Thank you, Isaac. Philip, thank you for being here today.
Yeah, it's great to see you, Michelle.
You too. I think we started you started your organization in 2009.
That's right.
And I started this in 2009.
There you go. That was the year, huh?
It was the year. I have a vivid memory, and I'm so thankful for that, because I have a vivid memory of running into Gordon Pepper in the post office, and he was just exuberant, telling me about the program you were putting together. And I was so excited because we were working with all these young people that we could see were on a path to crash and burn with addiction. And that was part of the starting point for us. And I was so excited about what you were doing.
Yeah, that's amazing. Love Gordon. I love to hear that. And it is interesting, both in 2009 and our organizations have such a similar heart, which really at its core is helping people get better and realizing that there's a value and a worth and a dignity in a life, just because, and
right.
Regardless of the socioeconomic status or what they've done, good or bad. And whether they're struggling with addiction or have a great place to live or not, there is an inherent worth in every individual. And so I know that's the core foundation of both of our organizations, and just wanting to come alongside those people and champion them and say, you have value, you have worth, there's hope for you, you can do it, and then doing everything we can to serve them in that journey, right?
Yeah, I was thinking about this before this morning, kind of, in my mentally thinking about the conversation. And one of the things that I thought about that we both have really worked hard to overcome is the stigma around addiction and recovery, and the stigma around homelessness are not that dissimilar, and sometimes completely overlap.
Yeah, that's so true. It's easy for people in general to want to put aside the things that are challenging. I think we struggle with it at times on an individual level. It's easy to put off the things that are hurtful or painful and the things around us that are challenging, and we get busy in our lives, and all of a sudden there's things in our society that are hard. They're hard to look at, they're hard to deal with, they're hard to face. And the challenge is when those things are surrounded with a person, which has such a value. It's really sad when we can move throughout life and just try to kind of not focus on those things. And that, I think that underlying issue creates the stigma of, we don't want to talk about this, we don't want to think about it, we don't want to focus on it. And from an individual basis, there's such shame associated with some of these things. We're told from a young age, you should be able to deal with this. You should have control of your life. You should, owning a home as a sign of success, having a job, owning a home, all these things. And when you struggle with those core things that you've heard from childhood that are indicators of what your life is supposed to be or what success is supposed to look like, there's such a shame associated. So the individual's struggling, wanting to talk about it. Society is not knowing what to do and trying to kind of, skirt around the issue because it's complex and it's hard and we don't know what to do. So now nobody's talking about it. And that's probably where we've found ourselves maybe 5 to 10 years ago. But boy, we're coming out of that with a bang, huh?
Oh boy, I had this exciting moment, and this might sound a little crazy, but I had this exciting moment. I was watching the national show with Hilary Swank that's about I think it's called Alaska Daily. Okay. And she's a reporter, and it's a series that's set in Anchorage and kind of highlighting some of the challenges of Alaskan culture. And a few episodes was missing and murdered Indigenous women, which we're very interested in. It's related to the trafficking work that we do. And one of the things that it was just one line on that show. They were looking for the daughter of this person that was a key character. And the statement was, we found his daughter. She's out in a treatment center in Wasilla. And I said to Jeff, this is such a great thing that I love that our community is known for having treatment available, right? Mm-hmm, totally. And so it was such a cool moment for me. I felt like it was this monstrous victory that of all the mentions we could get, it wasn't Valley Trash. It wasn't, some of the things that we kind of, as a community, get stigmatized with, where it was treatment. Mm. I felt so proud, and I wanted to share that with you because I thought about you and thought that's where, the work that you've done, that Carl Soderstrom has done, that the Matsu Health Foundation has supported, that all of these organizations working together have created a climate of recovery and a culture of peer support and a pull to that really is a counterbalance to the addiction.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and celebrating that life and not just the accomplishments, but the life in general. And Carl and I were actually just in Juneau together at the Behavioral Health Association conference, and several of the individuals that had got up to speak, there was a panel on peer support that Carl was participating in, and not just during the panel, which in the peer support world, it's very common to talk about recovery and, self-identify as someone in recovery, but several of the other participants, and these are, mostly the CEOs and the leaders of all these behavioral health organizations across the state. And it was amazing to see how many people were openly talking about themselves being in recovery. And Carl had mentioned it in the panel and just thanking everybody for being so courageous and bold, because these were not necessarily even clients who'd graduated through a program and sharing their story, which we try to do to help promote that recovery as possible. These were, and for the listeners out there, I'm using air quotes, these were professionals, right, so to speak, saying, I'm in recovery, and being able to stand proud and courageous with no stigma themselves, being able to say that. And so it's definitely come a long way over these last few years for sure.
Oh, it's incredible to see the culture that's been created. There's a comfort and a sense of belonging. I think for our clients, there's much less resistance to getting into recovery, even to going to treatment. 10 years ago, getting someone to go to treatment was like an act of God. First, finding a bed for them, particularly if they needed residential, it was weeks away. Mm-hmm. And thank you for filling that gap. And second, the culture around it was that you've somehow failed. Again, that sense of failure. So you fail if you have to go to treatment, but you also fail if you're not thriving in the, other areas of your life, and those two can't coexist, right?
And before we move forward, Philip, because we've talked to Set Free before on the 15th episode of this podcast when we had the National Recovery Month Day, where we kind of talked to everyone. But could you talk a little bit about the culture of your guys' organization and just kind of the services that you provide for anyone that maybe doesn't know?
Yeah, for sure. And Michelle just mentioned one of them, residential treatment, which we launched in 2017. And not just set free, but before I talk a little bit more about set free, I want to say we have had a great expansion in residential treatment beds, and not just residential substance use treatment, but beds in general. Beds for people in transition, shelter beds, like some of the stuff y'all are doing here, recovery residence beds, like more long-term sober housing kind of beds. And we have Alaska Rehabilitation Center, which is formerly known as Nugent's Ranch out here. They've expanded their beds and are looking to expand again. Carl and his group over at True North, they have launched residential beds out here. We've had other residential beds launch across the state too.
Yeah.
And so I think in the last 5 years, if I remember right, in 2017, when we launched our women's residential program, there had not been a residential program, a new program that had opened in many years in Alaska.
Yeah.
And we've seen that increase partially because of the advocacy people have done out there for funding.
Right.
And the state recognizing that need, and the foundations like the Health Foundation and the Trust and Rasmussen, and as well as the legislature putting some extra money towards some of those things. So I think that's worthy to be noted. But Set Free Alaska, as Michelle mentioned, we were established in 2009, really with the heart that every Alaskan would experience God's love and freedom from addiction. And we have expanded from that kind of narrow mission of addiction, which is huge, but it was very singularly focused. We realized pretty quick it's hard to deal with addiction if you can't deal with workforce and housing and employment and the mental health and all that. And so we shifted our vision statement here. We're now every Alaskan experiencing God's love, lasting freedom, a little bit broader.
Oh, nice.
And abundant life, which really includes some of those aspects that are so overlaid with addiction, such as safe and sober housing and having a good, meaningful employment where you're giving back in life to the community, all those kind of things. And so we have residential treatment, outpatient treatment for adults. We have a children's program, which is probably one of our least known about programs. We can serve about 80 kiddos at a time. These are mostly kids struggling with behavioral health problems. And so we're doing mental health counseling and treatment, and we have family services now where we can provide treatment for the kiddo and their parents could be in the adult treatment program.
Nice.
Doing family sessions. That's been really neat to see. We have 8 crisis beds now, providing crisis residential. That's our newest program. And we've got around, I want to say it's about 25 long-term sober housing, what we call recovery residence beds. And so peer support, case management is all kind of intertwined into our outpatient residential and all the services that we provide. We're mainly located here in Mat-Su, and we've got around 85 or so employees here in Mat-Su, and we've got a men's residential program and outpatient program at Homer. We got around 20 great staff down there. So Homer's kind of become a second home for me.
Nice.
Being down there quite a bit, supporting that program. So, yeah, and partnering, of course, with My House and all these other amazing organizations in the communities. It's been really just incredible this last decade.
I really have enjoyed, we've had several of our young mothers go through the Valley Oaks program. That's a mother and child program. And what a tremendous value that has for, you hear people talk about, getting sober and the motivation that their children provide them. And I think having them right there and going through that process with them, allowing the child to see that change and the transformation and the work that the parent does instead of being separated and then back together after treatment and not really knowing what to expect is really, really amazing.
Yeah, I love that program too. In fact, I'm cooking breakfast for them tomorrow morning and doing a devotion. And so it's one of my favorite things I get to do in the month is do breakfast for the ladies over there. And we had 9 child parent reunifications through OCS last year, which doesn't sound like a lot, but for those of you out there who know like what it takes when OCS gets involved, for that mom to be able to satisfy those requirements and for them to be able to say, you're safe and ready, and for the mom to jump through all those hoops.
Oh, my goodness.
Or the dad. But in our case, this is a women's program, and seeing those restorations and having a safe place where the OCS workers, we've built enough relationship for them to say, okay, if you're in treatment, if you're over here at Valley Oaks with Set Free, We know you're safe. We know you're sober. We know mom's going to be safe. And we can start working with them in that environment. It's just incredible. And our men's program in Homer, which is also accepts men with children. And this, I'm pretty sure, is the first residential substance abuse program in our state. It's actually the only one that we know of in the nation that will take a man with his child and allow a male to bring his child into treatment. And the court in Palmer, the Family and Toddler Court, had asked us when we were starting that program, are you going to accept kids? Because they were seeing this need, a lot more men having custody of the child and treatment being a barrier and not wanting to go to treatment because they don't want to give up custody of their child.
Right.
And I had never even considered it. And so Jessica Clarkson at the time was the Family and Toddler Court. She said, well, think about it. It could be a good opportunity. And so that led to us opening that program for men as well. And I forgot to mention, too, we have a DOC program. We got so much stuff going on, I can't even remember it all. But we have a 40-bed residential unit out at Palmer Correctional Complex now. So we have our own house out there.
Wow.
They call it a mod. We got 40 guys out there, and we have an outpatient program at minimum, an outpatient program at medium, and then we have some reentry programs through these 5 DOC contracts that we have. So that's a kind of a whole new thing we're doing out there inside of the 4 walls of the institution, which is great. Get to engage them in some positive
needed.
stuff while they're there. Right?
Yes, so needed. We've been saying for years that if we could get some of the substance use disorders work started before some of our clients that have gone to jail come out and have a reentry process that facilitates long-term treatment, it's so much different than those clients just being released and then calling us sometimes it's like at 10 o'clock on a Friday night and saying, yeah, I just got released. And so I don't really have a place to go. And if we can build those partnerships so that that doesn't happen, 1, it prevents homelessness. 2, it prevents relapse. And 3, it facilitates that recovery that we're really hoping for with incarceration anyway.
Yeah,
so
and that warm handoff is, if they don't have any connections or any healthy connections as they come out, they're going to, there's a high chance they'll fall back into what got them there in the first place. And so if you remember in 2020, right around summer when COVID was kind of hitting and nobody really knew what was going on, a lot of the restaurants had shut down around here. And I have a friend I meet with every Friday morning, and we ended up sitting in our cars next to each other in the car's parking lot in Palmer.
Oh, gosh.
No restaurants were open. And so we're just sitting there through the windows talking, drinking coffee. And I can't remember if it was a trooper or police. I think it was a police officer pulled up into the parking lot. It's about 7 o'clock in the morning and opened up the door, let out a young lady out of the back. I'm guessing she was in her early 20s. Unhandcuffed her, opened up his trunk, pulled out a piece of luggage and a duffel bag, and was dropping her in the car's parking lot in Palmer. And I'm sitting there watching this unfold, and I know she's being released. I'm not sure from where. Was she overnight in, like a holding cell, or were they releasing her from prison? And my heart just went out to her. And we, at that time, were operating a quarantine program where we could bring people in and quarantine them because of COVID and help get them into the next level, whether it was recovery residence or residential. And
right. I remember that. That was awesome.
Yeah. And so I went over and I introduced myself. Of course, the cop was kind of like,
wait, who's this guy?
First, but I had my set free jacket on. I said, hey, here's who I am. And we've got this program. And if, you wouldn't mind, I'd love to tell her about it. And she was a little apprehensive too, because I'm some stranger, and she's in a little embarrassing situation. Right.
Sure.
And so she tried to get a hold of some people and she wasn't able to, and probably thankfully so, because we were able to get her, Mark Weaver, I know is someone that he was one of our peers at the time. He came, picked her up, took her over to our quarantine program, and we got her somewhere safe, like immediately.
Nice.
And as you know, being in this field for years, it's not very often, and it's really now we're getting to the point where someone's in need, we have somewhere we can take them right now.
Yes.
Carl and them have the Day One Center. We had the quarantine now, which is kind of rolled into crisis. You guys have, all this place. There's these places now where when people are in trouble, they know where to come.
Yes.
And there was a time in our community where we'd find people like that in that situation. They didn't have anywhere to go, and there was nowhere to take them.
Correct.
And it's just so exciting to see. So there's so much more possibility and opportunities now for people who are in need to help get them along the path in that journey. Right?
Yeah, for sure. The one of the most striking things for me, we've just finished a year-long project that was a strategic plan for housing and homeless for the Mat-Su, and a company from Anchorage came out and kind of guided that, and we spent some time talking as a group, and we had our coalition members who were part of that group, and we really worked hard to not create a circumstance where we would have to have a congregate shelter. We had some kids that here that were older teens that really experienced some very, very traumatic things staying at the Sullivan Arena and being sort of moved around. Anyway, there were two funny things about that. One, when they started out, the guy that was leading the group drew a circle on the board and wrote housing in the middle, and he said, "What else do you need to deal with homelessness in your community?" And I said, "A continuum of care and an exit plan." And his response was, "An exit plan? I've never heard of that before." And I said, "It means that we empower people with education and treatment and support so that they never go back to being homeless again." And we that was the first day. And so we started that journey with this company, and it was so hard for them to put workforce development in the continuum because in their mind it just didn't fit. Well, it's not part of their community continuum, but it is part of ours. Yeah. And then as we were building that continuum, we kept talking about the resources, the Valley Oaks, the youth programs, the opportunities for kids to plug into job training and counseling, for them to get behavioral health counseling in their schools and have that as a beginning point so that when they graduate school, they have in the back of their mind that it's okay to see a counselor. It's okay that, again, reducing that stigma. And we had so many great conversations about all the resources that were available on this continuum to the demographic that we serve at my house. And I really think the people who were hosting that were blown away, that it was difficult to wrap their brain around the fact that not only did we have all these resources, but we work with them. We work closely and make phone calls and provide transportation and have people come here to do assessments and take people for assessments and coordinate with programs that have a waiting list. I know we had a young lady a year or so ago that was waiting for a spot in Valley Oaks, and she was in our housing just struggling with an addiction, and we were determined to just hang on to her until something came open, because that's how we save lives, right? We put her back out and she ends up in a trap house and we can't find her for another year. And so it was really interesting to watch someone from outside of our community perceive what we were describing. And I think they might have even had trouble believing that that's what we actually do. and I'm so proud of that. I'm so proud of the way that we work together, and that as a community, we've looked around, just like with your example about the COVID beds, looked around and said, what's needed, and just go do it. And I think prior to this, maybe prior to 2009, the idea was that you had an idea and then you studied the idea and then you did a pre-development project and then you planned it for another year or two. And by then everyone loses interest and it doesn't happen. And I really appreciate your passion for your organization and your advocacy, and the fact that you've had these ideas and thoughts and knowledge about all the different things, and you were just able to take one step at a time forward to the extent now that I love that you just said, I can't even keep track of all the programs. I resemble that. I feel that way sometimes. People say, what do you do there? And I'll talk about, the things that are fresh to mind, but not think about some of the more subtle or sidebar kinds of things that were an offshoot of something that we were already doing. Or So I really appreciate that about your organization and your passion and your advocacy, Philip. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for that, Michelle. I appreciate you saying that.
Yeah, thank
We're
you.
cut from the same cloth, huh?
We
just
kind of
wanna
are.
help in any way we can, right?
Yeah. Finding solutions and not accepting no for an answer.
Yeah. And you brought up a good point, and this is a great thing about our community, and something we should celebrate. We are known for our ability to work together.
We are.
And in fact, this was something that just came up at these meetings up down in Juneau. People were mentioning the collaboration, the continuum that's being built, the partnerships that are working together. The Valley has a reputation for that now, and that is a great thing. And it's because of leaders like yourself and others who are willing to kind of lay down the pride and lay down their own, need to be the one in control or the one who's steering everything and saying, let's just figure out a way to get this done for the good of the community, for the good of the people that we're serving, right?
Yes, yeah. That I read a book once that said control is an illusion, right? You're never totally in control.
That's right.
And I really think that most of the time I feel the best when I relinquish control and invite everyone to the table, and with that collaboration is felt by our clients. When we have co-occurring clients, they feel that we work together well. That's security for them, and it offers them additional support for their journey. And I think they know that they can, no matter where they come, if it's to your program, if it's to our program, we're connected, and that they're supported.
Yeah.
And I'm in agreement. I'm so thankful for all your hard work. Thank you for all that you've done. This is that's many years of dedication, and I appreciate your partnership. So thank you for joining me today. Thank you for
Thanks
all
for
you
having
do.
me.
Thank you for your staff. 85 people is a lot of people to be dedicated to your mission. And so thank you to your staff. And
Yeah, we need some counselors for them.
yeah, right. I have one here today for my staff. That's critical, isn't it?
Oh, totally.
Just keeping everybody
Care for
healthy.
the caregivers, right?
Yeah, keeping everybody healthy. So thank you. That's all the time we have for today. The My House podcast is recorded at the My House studio in Wasilla, Alaska, and our producer and editor is Isaac Smolden. I'm Michelle Overstreet, and until next time.